Every single relationship that you have has one common denominator, and that's you.
There's this great saying in AA, which is, if you don't think you have any character defects, get into a relationship. Intimacy is hard. It demands self-awareness and a level of vulnerability that, quite frankly, can be uncomfortable.
The life that we want is often within reach, but we have to overcome a lot of mental blockages.
But today, I'm going to do my best to crack the code. Right now, in the house, we have none other than the world-renowned relationship expert, Jillian Turecki.
What is the most important thing that people need to know about relationships or starting a relationship? There's two things, just two things.
And here we are.
Here we are.
It's good to see you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Excited to talk to you. You've been on quite a tear lately.
I mean, really.
You're like a mainstream figure now.
Am I? I don't know.
I think you are.
I don't know. I don't really, it's hard for me to see myself that way.
Is it disorienting, or have you been able to maintain some level of groundedness amidst, sort of the feeding frenzy around your ideas?
Yeah, I don't feel disoriented at all. I feel grounded. And I think maybe part of that is because I just don't see what other people see, maybe. I don't know. And I feel, I feel supported and grounded and grateful.
Well, you're a really cool and important voice of reason in an area that flummoxes, the best of us out there. I think we're
Yes.
all on some level in great need of relationship advice.
Absolutely.
And no matter how committed we are to our personal growth, we tend to
Yes.
get in our own way and,
Yes.
allow these, deeply embedded patterns that don't serve us to, kind of flare up and recur.
That's exactly right and very well said.
So if you had to put words to the overarching mission that you're on, how would you answer that?
I mean, not to sound cliche because of my book, but I really am on a mission to help people realize that it really does begin internally, that your relationships and your life, even if we were to take this beyond the scope of romantic relationships or familial relationships, that the life that we want is often within reach, but we have to overcome a lot of mental blockages. And so it really does begin with that sort of internal examination. There's a couple of missions that are sort of layered within that main one, which is, I don't think, at least not in this culture, that we really understand love. And, I always used to think that love was something that you just feel versus something that you actually commit yourself to and practice. And a lot of people also don't know how to love themselves. And so I see those two things as really why so many people have problems in relationships. Sure, we need certain skills like communication skills. We don't learn this in school. We learn it by watching our parents or our caregivers. And I don't think that we really truly understand what it is to love. I think we all want love, but if we can get the craving to love to be as strong as the craving to be loved, to give love. And so I work with also a lot of different people. Some people, they just tolerate so much nonsense in a relationship. So I've got those section of people that I'm trying to help, but we can't point fingers anymore. Like the victim mentality is out of control, and it's particularly out of control in relationships. And the more that you make it someone else's fault, the more you're going to repeat patterns. And that doesn't mean that it's your fault, but it is your responsibility. And we are much more powerful beings than we think or know ourselves to be. So it's sort of a long answer, but yeah.
There's something very empowering and really muscular about your message, because like so much more of this is under our agency to control and direct. If we just have an accurate understanding of the landscape and are provided with the education and the tools to develop, the self-awareness and the emotional regulation and all of these things that play into the dynamic of how we relate to another human being. But it begins with having a proper definition of love. Like our
Yeah.
understanding of love really comes down to sort of two things in my mind, which are A, like how we were raised, so what we observed and experienced in our upbringing,
Yes.
with the people who were responsible for our care, and then the messages that culture,
Yes.
inundates us with, whether it's Disney movies or whatnot, that provides this kind of basic operating system for how we think about and understand and pursue, receive, and give love, right? Um, and generally, like, these things are off base. Like, no matter how well you were brought up, there was probably something, that not awesome about that.
Yes.
And of course, we can all agree that, the kind of cultural messages that we've all absorbed and intuited over the years are certainly not an accurate representation of like what love is. And you said, like, love is, it's this choice, it's this decision, it's this verb, it's a commitment, right? So if you had an operating definition of love, like, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, so it's so hard because it's probably one of the hardest things to define. Love has many layers. I believe that there's the love that we feel when we're falling in love with someone, which is very rich with emotion and irrationality.
Mhm.
And then there's the meaning that we give love changes as we become more connected to someone. And so then there is the love where I don't love you just because I feel wonderful around you, or I feel like a better person around you, or I feel more calm around you. But I love you because your well being and your best interest is my best interest. And so at the core, love is selfless. But I think that what we've been fed is a love that's incredibly selfish, which is make me feel good, meet my needs.
Mhm.
If I don't feel great around you all the time, then it must not be love. And I do think that the highest form of loving someone is to put their needs sometimes before your own. Now that's a tricky thing for me to say because I work with a lot of people, mostly women, but not all, who are putting themselves last in everything. And so my message to them is like, no, you got to choose yourself first. You have to really love yourself. But one thing that I know for sure that's actually quite interesting, which is even the most selfless people in just you know them to be selfless, that maybe to a fault. Maybe they're putting way too many of everyone's needs before them. We can all get incredibly selfish in a relationship the moment we feel insecure, the moment we feel tired, whatever it is. And so I think the highest form of love is a selflessness. It's I care about your happiness. And if that means that you are better off without me, then I'm not going to keep you trapped in this relationship because I'm too afraid to lose you.
Mhm.
And that's pretty big stuff, you know? So that's how I would define it.
Do you think that this crisis around relationships that so many people are experiencing, across the globe right now, is particularly acute in America by dint of the fact that we seem to have an unbalanced relationship with our own self-obsession?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
it's like, to your point, like, it's all about, like, are you meeting my needs?
Yes.
Is my life, being more optimized by having you in it? And it's
Yes.
very kind of like internally, the calculus is all internal, as
Yes.
opposed to like this real piece of love, which is like the giving of it, like
Yes.
the nourishment that we get from the giving of it, rather than looking at it as this one way thing where we're calibrating it based upon how much we're receiving it.
Yeah, I do think there's something very cultural happening. And there's so much nuance to it. So yes, We are a culture that we've become obsessed with individualism. We've become obsessed with, yes, are you adding value to my life? And that is a definite problem. And then you have the people who don't know how to choose the right partner for them. And so they're not thinking about it correctly. They're not thinking, can this person bring value to my life? Here's the thing. It is an appropriate question to ask. Does this person, if we're trying to figure out if we should commit to someone, marry someone, whatever it is, pursue a real relationship with them, it is a legitimate question to ask oneself, does this person add value to my life? That's important. What's missing, especially in this culture, is, do I add value to their life? And how can I add value to their life?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, let me just think of all the ways in which I need them to give to me.
Unconditionally.
Unconditionally.
Yeah.
I mean, with certain parameters, you're not going to, if something's very unhealthy or you're mistreated, but yes.
You said when you choose a partner, you're not just choosing a partner, you're choosing how you're going to feel about yourself every single day. And basically this idea that, who you choose is a declaration of who you think you deserve.
Yes.
So explain that.
People ask me, what is the most important thing that people need to know about relationships or starting a relationship? And I said, there's two things, just two things: who you choose and who you decide to show up as. That's it. We are not taught, I certainly was not taught, but I think maybe certain families do pass this down, that your choice in partner is incredibly important. You can choose whoever you're attracted to if you want to have a fun weekend. That's not an important choice. But if you want life partnership, if you want a relationship, if you want to potentially live with this person, that choice is so important. They are going to impact your nervous system, your sleep, your choices, your worldview, your beliefs. You can't not. I mean, yes, we enter relationships as autonomous, sovereign beings, but you've been married a long time. Don't you feel like there's a part of you, and this is a beautiful thing, that there's like a blending, there's a yoking that happens. There's a yoga that happens between two people. And so it's very important that you make that choice wisely. And the only way you can make that choice wisely is by understanding yourself.
I want to really dive into the self-understanding and self-awareness piece. But when you were sharing that, all I could think about is the life cycle of the typical way we enter into relationships, which is like we become infatuated with somebody. And if that infatuation is mutual, there's a spark, there's lust, there's excitement, and it's very intoxicating and it's overwhelming. And both parties are projecting an idealized version of themselves onto the other person. On some level, it's that projection is based upon what we think that other person will like about us. And we kind of shade, the edges of the things we think they might not like. And then of course, over time that wears thin, the real selves emerge. And that's really where it seems like the choice has to get made. Like the idea that you're going to preconceptualize all of this entering into it doesn't feel like that's the natural way that most people do it.
Yeah, the natural way, like you said, yes, people get infatuated. What I'm trying to educate people on is, yes, we are emotional beings, and ultimately we're going to make our decisions based on our emotions. But you can still be discerning. You can decide, this person, I'm really attracted to them, but I don't know, could they actually do the job of being, can we do the job for each other, of being each other's partners? That's what I want to empower people to have, those kind of decisions. Certainly, I've known people who fall in love, get infatuated, and they go through that stage, that very difficult stage of, oh, wow, you mean this person is not perfect?
Yeah, what is the distinction between discernment and outsized expectations
Right.
or this idea of perfectionism.
Yes. Choose 3 to 5 things at most that are absolutely non-negotiable for you, and be 100% open-minded and flexible about the rest.
So give me an example.
Okay? I'm not gonna date anyone who is within the throes of drug addiction, alcoholism.
That's a good rule.
Not going to happen, no matter how wonderful of a human being they are, no matter how loving they are, no matter how much they want to change. If they're in their addiction, no matter how attracted I am to them, it's never going to happen.
And that's an act of self-honoring,
That's an act of
self-love.
self-honoring and self-love, because everyone suffers in that scenario, right?
Yeah.
So that's like a deal breaker. So that's also non-negotiable. Non-negotiable for me is also someone who knows how to work through problems. So I'm not interested in being in a relationship with someone once there's a problem, then I have to chase them for a week to talk about the problem. I don't care what trauma you had. I don't care who your parents were. I'm not interested. But you could have a hard time emoting. You could struggle to communicate sometimes. You could tell me, I just need a day to really think about this so we can talk about this better. You could, I don't want you to leave the toilet seat up, but you can leave the toilet seat up. Like there are things
What's fundamental versus what's trivial.
and that's really important. Everyone wants to be loved for who they are. So what does that mean? We want to be loved in spite of the fact that we are anxious or depressed or have this weird habit or we struggle with A, B, and C. And everyone deserves that. And, not a but, and we have to bring to the table things that make it so that someone would want to be in a relationship with us. Reliability, consistency, love, care, nurturing, all those things. Communication, the willingness to communicate. And this is so important that we're talking about this because people do think that there's going to be this incredibly perfect, highly evolved, angelic-like individual who's going to come in and be so much more evolved than we are that they're going to almost rescue us. And this is happening in people's unconscious all the time.
Or the converse of that, which is that, oh, this is a project and I'm going to be able to fix this person or rescue them.
Yes. And that's a conquest. So that's conquest. And that's a conquest that both men and women fall under the spell of, which is, yeah, I'm going to fix this person. I'm going to rescue them. I'm going to save them.
So to get clarity on what those important values are, it brings us back to self-awareness, right? I mean, the book is called It Begins With You.
Yeah.
Like it really does. I mean, honestly, what are the chances that you're going to be able to enter into and sustain a healthy relationship without putting in the work to develop that self-awareness, to really understand what your patterns are, where your behavior leads you astray, and to be able to identify those kind of landmines that are waiting for you out there. So kind of explain the premise of this idea of cultivating self-understanding.
It begins with one very specific understanding. Every single relationship that you have, whether it's romantic or not, has one common denominator, and that's you. People will immediately get defensive and misinterpret that as, well, I'm the problem. Not necessarily, but you're part of whatever is working and you're part of whatever's not working. Even if you were with someone, and I was once with someone who was a terrible guy, just a really bad guy, and treated me horribly. I chose him. I picked him.
Mm-hmm.
So I could have spent years being angry at him, and I could have spent years being angry at myself, all of it a complete waste of time that yields no growth and no maturity and no change in habits. Or I can say, interesting. What was it about him that I was drawn to? What else was going on in my life when I met him? What could that be about? So the step in self-awareness is to have a curiosity about yourself. I don't want people to get so obsessive with self, back to what we
Hmm.
were saying, where you're constantly in this self-analysis. But if you want something to change in your life or in your love life, whether you're married, single, divorced, whatever your relationship status is, you have to be able to look at yourself and your patterns.
So for somebody who's watching this or listening to this, who for whom this is brand new,
Mhm.
like I just end up in the same kind of crazy relationship time and time again. I don't know why I do it, uh, and I'm surrounded by friends that validate me.
Uh-huh.
How do you what do you mean? Like I have to understand myself or look within. Like what is the process of unearthing the stuff so that you can really understand what makes you tick and avoid these patterns that you seem to continue to perpetuate.
Well, look for the pattern. What did they all have in common? What did you see your parents? What was your parents' relationship like? What's your relationship with you're like with mom or dad? Is there something, is there some sort of familiarity about these people? Do you have a habit of just choosing based on chemistry? They're meeting some needs. What are the
Mhm.
needs that you're trying to get met? And then the next step, which is the step that a lot of people don't take because they get stuck in the analysis and the self-examination and they don't make any change. The next step is, well, what do I want and how badly do I want it and what am I willing to get it?
I think that your personal, backstory is the ultimate kind of illustration of all of this, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe just begin with, like, how did you even get interested in this in the first place? Because I think that, unties this knot in a
Yeah.
in a in a really perfect way.
I was a yoga teacher for many, many years, almost 20 years in New York City.
Mm.
And so I always was fascinated with the mind body connection and I was fascinated with feeling more whole. And I had some lovely relationships and I had some not so lovely relationships. I had a relationship when I was younger that had nothing to do with my relationship with my father, which was very difficult. And I struggled with my relationship with my father. I was very scared of him. And I was never really close with him.
Well, it's even more acute than that. I mean, your father was a sort of a renowned psychiatrist,
Yes. Yes.
right? And he wrote a book called,
The difficult
The
child.
Difficult Child, and you happen to be a difficult
Yes.
child, which is like an insane. The
Uh-huh.
more I think about that, the more outrageous that is. Like,
It's kind of
especially for
crazy.
a psychiatrist
Yes. Talk
to
about lack of self-awareness.
perpetuate like this trauma. Like, I'm imagining like the idea of me writing a book about my daughter
Mhm.
and putting on the title the word difficult, like, it's insane.
Yeah, it's insane.
What was that like? Explain that, and what was that like for you?
Yeah, so my father was a renowned psychiatrist, as you said. I was born into the world with a sensitive nervous system. I was just sensitive. And there's very psychiatrists know this, have a much better understanding of this, but like I didn't like the way certain fabrics felt. I was not the easy kid. I was the very funny, creative, dynamic, crazy kid. And I cried all the time. And I was born in the 70s. So that was a time where like mom did everything, dad did nothing, and my parents were immigrants.
Mhm.
So there was that too. And he figured out that I had something called difficult child syndrome and that,
Which is like a
it's so
crazy.
insane.
Has
I
that
know.
been renamed something else?
It's been renamed something
I mean,
else.
he could have
He called
given
it a
it a title
syndrome.
like Drama of the Gifted Child or
I
one of those
know.
other
I
books,
I know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And basically to help parents understand that they weren't messing up, but to learn how to work with this child so that everyone can be happy. So
Mhm.
I think there was some intention behind it. And it's interesting because he would talk about a genetic makeup that we're born this way. And that's where, and I told him this, that's where I thought he missed a point, which is actually, yes, we are born, I believe, with certain nervous systems, like, certain sensitivities. But the sensitive child, the sensitive baby who is born into a fractured home is then going to be symbolic in her or his own way of what's going on in the family. My father was, he had bipolar, had not been diagnosed yet.
Mm.
So he was self-medicating. There was some alcoholism there, I'm sure. My mother was, like a model beauty queen from South Africa, like so smart. But at that time, there was nothing like, I'm going to become something, I'm going to become a housewife. And she couldn't stand him. And so he was clinically had some problems. He had mental illness. My mom didn't have mental illness, but she was depressed. So here I come, and I was not planned. And I'm very sensitive for, whatever. I can't even begin to explain because I'm not a doctor, but I do think Ayurvedically speaking that there is like certain things that happen in a person's nervous system. And so I'm reacting to the environment. There was nothing about, reacting to the environment.
Right.
Or like maybe
the book is all about absolving the parents of any kind of blame for this.
any responsibility or anything, or no, there's no self-reflection. It's just a very practical book. How do you deal with this difficult child? Mm-hmm. So that was a monkey on my back for a long time. Yeah. And so I think it led me to yoga. I think it just made me want to understand myself more. And understand myself emotionally because I was always very sensitive. And then, so because of that, my relationship with my father, I was never close with him. And I picked up on his energy was very off to me. Mm-hmm. And he never physically abused me ever. But I picked up on the passive aggressiveness, and that was very hard for me. And I had some relationships that did not echo that relationship at all because it's still a mystery. I even know psychologists love to say that everything comes from childhood. Some things are still a mystery. But as I got older and wanting to get married and wanting to have a family and that vulnerability started to seep in. Then I started to make maybe not so great choices.
So your husband,
yes.
If I'm just purely projecting, on some level is manifesting these same behavior patterns as your father, emotionally withdrawn, maybe volatile or unpredictable.
Yes. Personality-wise could not be more different. Didn't look the same. Vibe was totally different, just like in personality. But yeah, he would withdraw. And that was my father. You never knew what was going on in that brain of his. And you always wondered, is it me? So there was eggshells. And I felt a ton of eggshells around my husband. And I didn't have the tools to deal with that. And I was still under the hypnosis of a belief system that somehow it was me. Because after all, I am difficult.
There's a whole book to establish that.
Yes, exactly.
Look, I put my skin through a lot over the years. Decades in chlorinated pools, just way too much Southern California sun, basically zero thought about skincare. And it wasn't really until I hit my mid-50s that I finally kind of woke up and started taking care of my body's largest organ for the first time, which began with Bon Charge and their amazing award-winning red light face mask. It's equipped with optimal wavelengths of red light at 630 nanometers and near infrared at 850 nanometers that work at the cellular level to help promote youthful, glowing skin, smoother skin texture, and more even-looking skin. And the best part, the red light face mask fits right into everyday life. Just 10 to 20 minutes a day, totally portable, suitable for all skin types, and backed by a 1-year manufacturer's warranty. But Bon Charge isn't just about your face. Their sauna blanket has been great for recovery. It's like having your own personal sauna that folds up when you're done. So go to boncharge.com and use coupon code RichRoll20 to save 20%. That's boncharge.com, code RichRoll20 for 20% off. My name is Rich Roll, and I have been wearing glasses since I was 4. That is a full 5+ decades worth of spectacle frames. Many, if not most, I think I would say in retrospect, were regrettable fashion decisions. But, what did I know? Well, what I do know was that back then, there was not a single optical option for the athlete that you could wear in normal, everyday life without committing a fashion faux pas that was downright embarrassing. That is until the 2 Stanford swimmers behind Roka devised the ultimate solution. Super lightweight, high performance specs that never slip off no matter how sweaty or high stakes the setting. No longer do you need to compromise performance for style because Roka has what you need no matter your personal design preference. It's no mystery that winter is on the horizon, and Roka is responding to that by expanding their reach into snow, applying the same obsessive design and award-winning technology. They just dropped 2 brand new snow goggles, so dialed in, you're gonna forget you're even wearing them, which is kind of the point. Experience the difference for yourself. Unlock 20% off with the code RICHROLL at roka.com, or you can click the link in the description below. This all comes into acute focus in a very specific and particular way when I think like in the same day, your mother is diagnosed with cancer, you have your 3rd miscarriage, and essentially your husband breaks up with you over the phone.
Yes. So my mother had been diagnosed a couple months prior, but I just found out that she was like basically had a couple months to live. Like this was it. And I woke up one morning and to a miscarriage, and he was at work already. And I called him. I said, "Can you come home?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, I have to go to the gynecologist because I have to get blood work to make sure that this is actually what's happening. Will you meet me there?" "No, I'm too busy." What breaks my heart about that version of myself, because I don't feel I have no emotional attachment to him or that day really anymore. I've processed it so much. But what breaks my heart for her, like me, was that I didn't 100. I knew intuitively that was wrong, but I didn't 100% know that no, that's something that your husband. Your expectation should be that your partner is 100% by your side during an experience like that.
But having been reared in an environment in which you were walking on eggshells and there's this sort of fear of rejection or abandonment,
Yes.
it's not surprising that you would imagine like, oh, I did something wrong, or like, what did I do to, make this person reject me in this
Yes.
situation?
I always turned it towards me. Even though, I have a feisty side of me, and I would sometimes like that anger would come up, be like, no, this is wrong. But at the end of the day, I didn't stick to my guns with that. It was always like, I always felt like it was me. So, and then later that afternoon, and then that happened. And, later that afternoon, he sent me a text. He said, "I'm going to stay at my parents." And I knew that he was fleeing because this was a pattern, and never to this degree. But it's not like this was like an amazing relationship and there was no signs of this, and this was completely out of left field. So I knew he was fleeing, and then it was just, a nightmare. That was a nightmare day.
But this is the perfect storm of circumstances to, birth this, to use your own word, like obsession with human relationships and what makes them work and what derails them.
Yes. And I feel very passionate as well about helping people reframe traumatic events like this in such a way that you can actually steer your life in a different direction, where I can look back and say, I wouldn't want to go through that again, but I understand why it happened. Look, I'm here sitting with you today.
A fundamental thing that seems to derail people is this idea that somebody else is responsible for our happiness, when in fact it's the opposite, which, again, it brings us back to ourselves. What is our relationship with ourselves? How are we honoring ourselves?
Yes.
How are we understanding ourselves? And how are we, honoring how we honor ourselves by seeking out partners who, with whom we can have, there's the potential for something healthy to emerge.
Yes. No one can make you happy. I think they can contribute to your happiness, just like people can contribute to your misery. But no one can make you happy. And we go into relationships thinking that this other person's going to make us happy. Even if rationally we know that's not true, we expect that. And no one who you're going to be in, there's no one in your life who you love who's going to always be on and only focused on you and only focused on loving you. And by the way, you wouldn't even want that from a lover. You wouldn't respect them. You'd be like, get a life.
Mm-hmm.
So we are responsible for our fulfillment. A relationship, I really truly believe, should add significantly to your life. Otherwise, too labor intensive. Why do it?
So then what are the foundational principles that create the bedrock for a healthy relationship?
Okay, well, open communication, definitely. That doesn't mean you're talking about the relationship all the time. But what I have found is that the strongest couples, when there's a problem, they just tackle it. That doesn't mean that they're going to solve every problem. Some problems are just unsolvable. But they're not avoiding it. They're not avoiding the other person. They're not sweeping it under the rug. They're just like, let's just sit down and talk about this respectfully, There's also the ability to, okay, let me frame it this way. You know what destroys relationships that people don't really know? Mismanaged stress. Now, life can get difficult. You can have surgery. That's going to be harder than you thought. The recovery is going to be harder than you thought it would be. Your parents are going to die. Life can throw us some pretty heavy things. Most of the time, though, people are reacting to silly little things that are not anywhere even near the kind of stress I just spoke about. And they are bringing that stress home, and they are becoming emotionally unavailable to their partner. Then they don't want to have sex, or they don't want to kiss, or they don't want to hold hands. And they're filled with so much tension. So bringing it back to the relationship with yourself, the ability to be like, oh, I need, a very popular term right now is self-regulation, emotional regulation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about being happy all the time. It's not about being perfectly steady all the time. It's about focusing or paying attention to your relationship with your life and with stress, and not being in a constant state of reactivity. When you've got two people who are constantly reacting to the circumstances of life that are not even that major, you get two people who become very disconnected from each other.
I just had Mark Brackett in here last week to talk about this very thing.
Oh, really?
And the more I think about emotional regulation, it really is a cornerstone in a way that we underestimate. Like if we could just understand our emotions and self-regulate just a little bit better, we would avoid so many of our problems. Like it really boils down to us being overly reactive too often.
Yes.
At the wrong time.
Yes.
And in the context of relationships, I mean, this is the sort of epidemic of our modern time. Like we're out in the world, we're super busy, we do our thing, we come home, we're tapped out, we're exhausted. We laid it all out on the field during the day. And when we get home and we're faced with the prospect of interacting with the person we care about the most, we're depleted. And so it's like, I just don't, can we just table this until later? We avoid those situations because our energy stores are on low or whatever.
Yes.
And I think the other thing that contributes to that is the longer that you're in a relationship, and especially when kids get involved, it becomes very sort of not transactional, that's the wrong word, but like logistical. It's like you become a transit authority, and all of the conversations are reduced to like how we are managing the household and our lives together. And we mistake that for tending to the relationship.
People mistake that for intimacy, and it's very far from it. It's the ship of the relationship, right? It's the partnership of the relationship.
The business
It's
end.
the business end of the relationship. It's important. But you better be tending to the intimacy. And I'm not talking about just sexual intimacy. I'm talking about eye contact, some tenderness, some laughter, a little bit of just relaxation together.
That would be nice, but, maybe, like,
Hmm.
after next week when things calm down. Like, we have
Yeah.
this propensity to always think things are gonna, be more chill later.
And that's the mistake that people make. You really have to be making an effort to connect with your partner every single day. And it doesn't have to be this whole thing. It doesn't have to be going out on a date. It could just be eye contact and just saying, I appreciate you, I love you. Or, you know, if you know your wife loves to hear that she's beautiful, you tell her that in a way that's very heartfelt. Whatever is feels very meaningful to your partner, because everyone likes to hear different things.
Another piece here is disabusing people of the idea that if it's a good relationship, it's like smooth sailing and easy, and it's like, no, it's work no matter what, right? Like, there must
It's
be
so
something
hard.
wrong with this relationship because we keep having these difficult things that we have to work through.
Yeah, and this is where it gets so incredibly nuanced, because there are some people who all they know is hardship in relationships. All they know is hard. And then they're single and they keep choosing the hard. And for those people, I have to say, you know what? Relationships take work. But as the Gottman say, there has to be a disproportional amount of good times to bad times. You might go through, especially if you're with someone over decades, you're going to have maybe many marriages within that relationship and you're going to go through hard times. But overall, things should be better than they are not.
Mhm.
And it shouldn't be so hard and laborious all the time. It's not supposed to be that either. But yes, relationships take work. It's not smooth sailing, but here's something that it's going to be hard for people to hear. Should I say it?
Please.
The more complicated you are, the more reactive you are, the more struggle you have with finding meaning in life, not happiness, but meaning in life. The more selfishness you have to overcome, the more work you're going to have to do in a relationship. And it's not about, because remember, it's who you choose, because that is always important, but it's also who you choose to be. And sometimes the hardest work in a relationship is not just how do I get along with this other sovereign, autonomous human being who has their own mind and their own beliefs and their own opinions, which is part of the reason why I love them, by the way. How am I going to get along and live with them? It's also, how am I going to overcome my pride, my selfishness, my own complicated stuff? That's the work.
And bring it all to the
And
table.
bring it all to the table.
In order to do that, to have that level of open, intimate, communication, um, with your partner, there has to be a foundation of trust. And I think, in my experience or observation, when people are avoidant, and I would call myself an avoidant person.
Don't.
Well, we can get into that in a
Yeah.
minute, but
Yeah.
there is this fear that is, oh, if I shared with this person like what I really felt or what I really think or my real opinion on this, that will be the end of the relationship. I'll be rejected, or I'll just be dropping a grenade on this thing and
That's the mind of
exploding it.
many men, because gender's involved in this too. A lot of men think like that.
And what is the typical like women version of that?
If I say what I want, I'm gonna be too needy, or I'm gonna be abandoned. I'm gonna be
Mhm.
left. I'm not gonna, yeah.
And so are those the two kind of paramount obstructions to open communication, do you think?
Yeah, those are huge ones.
And so how can you disabuse people of this, or make the argument for having the hard conversation anyway?
By understanding that every single person is afraid that they're not good enough in some way. In some way. And in a relationship, a romantic relationship where the stakes are high, that fear of not being good enough. And then eventually, if you're not good enough, then somehow you're going to be deprived of love. That is the pain that we are all trying to avoid, is failing and not being good enough and losing love. So if your belief system includes, well, if I tell the truth, she's not going to be able to handle it. And then it's going to become a whole thing. So I rather just avoid it. What you could do instead is learn how to stay grounded, even if she has a reaction.
Mm-hmm. And how can the respective partners signal trust to the other one that it's safe to have this exploration? Because we all want greater intimacy, and greater intimacy is purchased through engaging with this process.
Yes. So part of it is how you express it. When you can express something that's difficult to express by starting out by saying, I think this could be just me and my perspective, or this is what I'm struggling with, and this might be a me problem. I don't know. So if you can be accountable, personal responsibility is the medicine. Instead of, I'm having this problem and I think it's you.
Yeah, that's probably not a good way to go about it,
And
right?
we do that even if we're trying to be sensitive. You hurt me, you did this, you did that. Instead of, this was my experience, I am hurt, but I also realize that there might be more to this story and I want to talk about it with you.
Yeah, that's something that I've learned in AA. Like, just own your side of the street and share your experience without pointing fingers or castigating the other
I think
person.
that's the best thing about the 12-step program, is forcing people to take radical accountability.
In this process of trying to communicate more openly, I think you need to have a self-understanding of, like, kind of what you're comfortable with in that type of dynamic, as well as an understanding of what works and what doesn't work for the partner. Like, my wife and I, we kind of have an unspoken rule. Like, when we are getting after each other about something, like, we kind of stay in it until we find ourselves to the other side. And we're pretty good at conflict resolution.
That's great.
And we have amazing communication around these sorts of things, but that's not for everybody. Like, some people need to exempt themselves from the situation in order to not be reactive, to emotionally, regulate themselves and return to it.
Absolutely. But you don't take a whole day. You don't take a week. You say, I need an hour. And you say, I love you. I'm completely flooded with so much intense emotion right now. I'm going to go regulate. Give me a couple of hours, babe.
As long as you do return to the conversation.
You have to promise to return, and you have to always return. Otherwise, you are unreliable and you can't be trusted.
What are some of the other myths out there that trip people up?
Something that I talk about in the book is that you really can't convince someone to love you. You can't make someone be a better partner. All you can do is be the kind of partner and person you want to be, and hope that that inspires better connection. And if it doesn't, then maybe you have, something to figure out about that particular relationship. But you can't make someone fall in love with you. You can't make someone love you well. You can't make someone choose you out of a sea of people like you're the person. And you should never, ever, ever try. You should only try to be you and the best version of you.
Neediness is not a good look anyway.
It's terrible.
But it is this real pernicious thing, because on some level we all we need and want love. And in order to get it, like, we pursue these people who we believe are going to deliver it to us for us, right? Where the real the real solution here is like the more work you do on yourself, it's like water rises to its own level. So if
Yes.
you're trying to attract a certain person, but you don't really have anything to give because you haven't engaged in that process of trying to, work yourself out and heal yourself and improve yourself, then it's unlikely that, even if you go on a couple dates with this person, that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
Um, Instead, if you work on yourself and rise your own level up so that you are a match for that person, then you have something to offer and you become more attractive to that person. But
Absolutely.
this is work. This is work nobody wants to do, Jillian,
Well, but
because it's hard.
it's hard, but here's a myth, and then I have another myth. It's not like you go into a cave and do all this work on yourself tirelessly, and then you come back and you're ready for the relationship. Because you know how many people come to me single and they're like, I was doing so well. I loved myself. My life was full. I was doing well. And then I got into the relationship.
Right.
And because you have to learn in the
Yeah,
relationship.
that's another AA thing. It's like if
Yeah,
you wanna know your character flaws, like, get into a relationship. It's like you
absolutely.
can go meditate in the cave as long as you want, but as soon as you're in the world, that's the
Yes.
real litmus
And
test.
you have to be willing to look in the mirror and to be able to do that work, and it's just humility. It's just checking the ego.
The other piece there is this notion that you have to achieve some level of self-perfection in order to, make yourself, attractive and available
We're all
to the
doomed.
person you would really like to be dating,
We're
right?
all
Yeah,
doomed.
and so that's a process that is gonna lead you to not a great place and
No.
there's no end to that anyway.
Here's what people are most attracted to, men, women, doesn't matter who you are. Confidence. Confidence is not having faith in you being perfect or your perfectionism. Confidence is having faith in yourself in spite of or despite the fact that you are very flawed.
A sense of your own internal capacity.
Yes, and look, not every character defect is created equal. And a lot of people don't know, ones where you really have to work on it versus, yeah, I mean, I don't like speaking to the fact like people wanting someone perfect. Like, I want someone, they're never anxious or they never struggle with anything and they're always consistent and this and this and that. And I just want that. It's like, okay, well, I recommend that you don't compromise on someone having integrity, meaning they don't lie to you, they don't steal, and they treat you with respect and they treat the people around them with respect. You see if they're a career person, if they're in business, the way they handle themselves at work. This is called character. I don't see anxiety or, having whatever, like really struggling with public speaking or even just struggling with, your relationship with a parent or you're struggling with some procrastination. Like these are not character defects that really are deal breakers,
Mhm.
you know?
I think there is a tendency to kind of self-identify with like whoever you're in a relationship with. If they're doing something that you don't like or whatever, it becomes this referendum, on the state of the relationship,
Yes.
instead of just being like, oh, that's interesting that they're kind of having a moment and spiraling out, but it doesn't
Yeah.
have anything to do with me. And
Yes.
like, oh, do you need support? Like, I'm available if you need that, but I don't need to let that dysregulate my entire day.
Yes. And some people are just better at that than others. And so they're better matched with someone who maybe spirals out a lot because it's not incredibly triggering to them.
And it goes back to it begins with you because you have to
Always.
understand like not everything they're doing is about
You.
you. It's not.
Exactly.
It
It's
almost
not
never
about
is.
almost never is.
And that's like the real unlock in the entire thing.
And but they're reminding you of mom or dad or your ex, and then you're projecting, and then you're forgetting the fact that, like, you have to give someone grace and that you're a real pain in the butt too sometimes. And so, the more again, it always boils down to know what's absolutely intolerable. And if you can be very, very open-minded and easygoing and flexible about the rest, then chances are you're a pretty good partner.
Mhm. In order for that to function at the highest level, both people have to have growth mindsets and some basic commitment to their own respective self-improvement.
And
And there's not gonna be like a perfect balance of that. But if
no.
somebody is not interested in that and the other person is, that doesn't seem like it's going to work.
It's not going to work. And some people are just raised also with that. They're just raised with, I don't know, just having a sort of like not making mountains out of molehills kind of thing, and just having a lot of flexibility in relationships. And look, if you're someone, I've met people and I've met women who've said, I'm I'm very loving, I'm very nurturing, but I remember speaking to this woman, she's like, but I'm a lot. And I used to always date men who would tell me I'm too much. And I thought, okay, I'm too much. I need to figure some things out. And, there were some things that, because we all are responsible. She's like, I definitely had to be less reactive. I really had to work on certain things in my behavior. I did that. And I also married a guy who just like, for whatever reason, maybe it was his relationship with his mom. He was like, you're not too much for me. Like, it's cool. Like, I kind of like this. You're the challenge I've always wanted. So again, it was a combination of her. She wasn't fixing herself. She wasn't changing herself, but she, worked on a few behaviors that she was like, you know what, this could be a little bit better. And then also she chose someone who just, it was like, I like this.
But that opens the door to a whole other really important piece here that you talk about, which is like the story of it all.
Yes.
So I'm a lot, that's it, that maybe, but like, it's also a story that person seems attached to, right?
Like I'm avoidant.
This is, right. Exactly. Exactly. Like,
I'm not going to let you
this
get
is
away
who
with
I
that.
am. And it becomes like an excuse for the behavior.
Right.
It's, psychiatry speak, that makes us feel like we're doing something because we can put a label on it,
Yes.
but we're not actually doing anything to modify the behavior, right?
Right.
And we're all, humans are storytelling creatures. We learn by stories and we make sense of the world and ourselves through stories. But those stories, generally aren't anchored necessarily in anything that's actually true. And there's so many ways in which our attachment to those stories lead us to poor outcomes or astray.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about the story aspect of all of this.
Anything that we put after the word I am, we identify with. Anything that we identify with, we become almost addicted to it. And then we stop seeing ourselves as very nuanced, multidimensional, multifaceted beings who are capable of changing behavior. There's also, well, I'm this, so, this is just who I am. No. You can actually change that. You can change that. And if you believe that that's who you are, believe it or not, that's who shows up. That's who's going to show up a lot of the time. And then we do something that's sort of avoidant or anxious. And then we go, well, that's who I am. And, I have this thing called, insecure attachment, all these diagnoses. And it's doing more harm in my view. And this is, I'm going to get some, maybe some flack for this, but I think it's doing more harm than good. I think it's great to have an understanding. I think it's been a very, very important contribution to the world of psychology, attachment theory. But I think that it's gone too far. And a lot of times people are saying, well, I'm avoidant or I'm anxious. It's like, are you? Or were you just in a situation where you didn't know how to handle it? Or are you just reacting to something, to your environment in that moment? There's just way too much nuance.
For me, I have to look at the errant behavior. I have to own it. And then I have to identify the need that it is filling. Like I'm doing it for a reason because
Yes.
it's doing something for me.
What do
right?
you believe it is? What need is it meeting for you?
Well, it would depend on the behavior, right?
So let's talk about an avoidant behavior.
So yeah, so if I'm avoiding a difficult conversation, it's most likely because I feel that if I were to be honest in that context, that I will be, rejected and abandoned because fundamentally I'm unworthy of love. And love is a transactional construct that I have to earn. And the way that I earn it is by putting a mask on and showing up in a way that I think that person wants me to show up.
That's
so
your
it's like,
story.
yeah,
That's
so this
the
is a story.
Yes.
So this is a story.
Yes.
And like, I'm sticking to it. You know what I mean? But like, okay, now what? Right. And so for me, yeah, the contrary action is like, okay, I know that's my urge or my tendency, and how am I going to, I can feel it coming on, or I can be aware of it when I
Yes.
have that resistance. And then the work is to do the contrary thing, which is to not avoid it and go directly towards it. And every time I do that, it's muscle memory. You're gaining experience with this new behavior, um, and the discomfort of it reduces. And that doesn't mean that it ever goes away, but with each one of those experiences, when you endure it and you get to the other side and you realize like you weren't abandoned or you weren't, it's like there's a time and a place for all of these things, of course, but um, that's the hard part. Like that's when
Yes.
you detach from the story and try to tell a new story.
Yes. And can I add something to it? Try to understand what her story is in that moment, right? Because oftentimes I would think part of this story that you have is that you are going to disappoint her. Is that true?
I'm going to disappoint her, but she will finally, get a full picture of like who I am and realize
Yes.
she made a terrible mistake.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's
And I do,
internalized shame.
I do this across the board, not
Yeah.
just with my wife. Like
Yeah.
I do this in all kinds of
Right. And shame.
professional and social situations.
Right. So it's the shame. But if we think about what the other person needs, then we lower the risk of us being too self involved in our own story.
Sure. And what she needs is all of me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's what she's craving and I'm depriving her. Like I'm declining to fulfill that need, which is fundamentally intimacy,
Mhm.
by, hiding from it as opposed to, engaging with it.
Yes. And
Right.
that,
Would you agree with
yes, I
that?
think that's wonderful. And also like her fear of not being enough. So that every time you do that, then she's wondering maybe she doesn't, or the other person is wondering maybe this person doesn't see me as worth it.
Hmm.
Or, I have no idea that they feel ashamed.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to think about that.
Okay.
In a world that's just flooded with tech for tech's sake, it's rare to find innovation that truly elevates, that serves the human in body, but also in soul. And that's why I stand behind On, a brand pushing technology forward with intention to create elevated gear that elevates us all. Consider LightSpray, a breakthrough in next-gen high-performance shoe technology that replaces laces with this revolutionary ultra-lightweight single-piece upper that moves with you, not against you. Tested with elite athletes, designed for anyone who values performance without compromise, head to on.com/richroll to experience technology-driven performance wear. This podcast is brought to you by Squarespace. As someone who has been able to create an influential presence online and sustain it for a long period of time, I can tell you that what it requires is getting over asking others for permission and giving it to yourself to create a platform to share your expertise, to amplify your voice, to build a community, and to serve it. To get there, get Squarespace, because Squarespace gives you everything you need to claim your domain, showcase your offerings with a professional website, grow your brand, and get paid all in one place. Award-winning templates mean that you start with something beautiful right out of the gate that anyone, can then customize using drag and drop editing to build something that looks completely bespoke. The video showcase features allow you to create video libraries, perfect for online courses or premium content. You can easily add paywalls to monetize your expertise directly, and their email campaign tools handle relationship building for you. So stop waiting for someone else to build for you what you can build for yourself right now. Check out squarespace.com/richroll to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using the code richroll. What is your counsel when somebody comes to you and there has been an abuse of that trust? Like, trust is fundamental to open communication, but somebody's caught in a lie or they were caught cheating or something like that. And the person on the other side of that is faced with trying to decide, do they stay in this? Do they break up with this person? And how is that trust going to be rebuilt?
When it comes to infidelity, there's lots of different stages to healing. One is the person who did lie or cheat or did the betrayal, they have to show remorse for hurting their partner. They often won't say that they are sorry for actually doing what they did, um, but they're sorry that what they did was the wrong thing to do to their partner, right? Like, so they had the
Hmm.
experiences maybe was important to them, but they have to show a tremendous amount of remorse. You have to almost beg for forgiveness. That's very important. So that's just one layer of it. That's not
Hmm.
all of it.
If the person who is cheated on has wounding around that, that's going to make that all the more difficult, I would imagine, to repair.
It's very difficult to repair, but we have to also look into why people cheat. This is difficult. There are people out there who cheat no matter what. They're just have very, very low character, and they don't treat people well, and they just cheat. And I could psychoanalyze them and their family, but it's there's no point.
Hmm.
They're going to cheat on whoever. That's not as common as you're feeling disconnected from your partner, which is as much of your fault and responsibility as your partner. And throw in, you feel disconnected from yourself. And that is the number one thing. You feel disconnected from yourself. So you don't know how to connect with your partner, or you're living this life with your partner that feels so divorced from the aliveness that you want to feel. So instead of figuring out how to feel alive in ways that are actually productive and ways that include your partner, you're going to have an affair. The affair meets the need for adventure, for novelty, for mystery, for uncertainty. And then at home, you have all this safety. I see this all the time in women who cheat. My husband's so safe, it's very stable, but then I feel alive with this other person. I
Hmm.
remember working with someone, and her husband was very devoted and she loved her husband, and he was a really good guy. But she was having this affair with someone who was, it's like out of a movie, you know, brooding, dark, um, unpredictable.
Uh-huh.
She knows in her mind, if I were to actually be in a relationship with him, it wouldn't last or it'd be a disaster. Why do I crave him? On the outside, you can think, well, because maybe your husband's boring, or maybe it's because, whatever, like your marriage has gotten boring. Or maybe, as was the case with her, you don't feel connected to what makes you happy anymore and what gives your life meaning. And so this affair is part distraction from that, but also part entryway into something that feels like your blood is moving through your veins again. And it actually has nothing to do with your husband, even though it has everything to do with him, because you are destroying your marriage
Mm.
and have the potential to destroy this man's life because of something that you're doing.
That-
So it's the erotic with this affair, but it's something that she's missing inside her life.
It's super interesting. I mean, it is also an example of looking for an externality to solve that,
Yeah.
internal um, dilemma around like meaning, finding meaning in your life and externalizing it, right? Rather
Yes.
than taking responsibility for it and like acting out and in a self-sabotaging way.
Or needing some adventure, needing some novelty, needing some excitement, but doing it in a way that's self-sabotaging behavior, as opposed
Yeah.
to ways that actually will give your life more meaning and make your relationship stronger.
The fundamental question for so many people who are in a relationship that, isn't like perfect or whatever. At some point something happens and the question arises like, do I break up with this person or do I stick it out?
Mm.
Like probably everybody in every relationship has, come to that at some point and
Yeah,
had to make that decision. How do you walk people through how to make the right decision? Obviously, it's incredibly case specific and everything, but
it is.
are there some general principles to help people solve that equation for
Yeah, it's the
themselves?
question. It's the question I get the most. It's like the top 3 questions I get the most. How do I know if it's time to go? Um, so low hanging fruit first because I think it's important. If there's any abuse, any violence of any kind, you get out. There is no plan B. You don't give them a second chance. It's done and you get help. Aside from that, and let's say you're invested. This is not someone you've been dating. So I think I should answer it like if you've just been seeing this person for like 3 months and you're not sure if this is it, or like you're married or you're, in full partnership. Let's start with the full partnership.
Mhm.
Often when we are thinking about if we should stay or go, we're thinking about one person and one person only, ourselves. We're thinking about what we're not getting, the needs that are not being met. And we're not thinking, how have I been as a partner? Am I meeting their needs?
Mm.
Do I even know what their needs are? What's like remarkable to me, and maybe this is, I don't know if you and your wife have done this, or maybe this would be a fun thing for you guys to do later tonight. But a lot of people are in relationships and they don't even know what their partner needs to feel loved and important, cherished, to feel like they are important to them, to feel like they're growing together. Like they just don't know what the other person needs.
The needs are unstated.
They're unstated
Yeah, you said this
and
amazing thing.
uninvestigated.
I love this phrase that you use, which is unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments,
Yes,
which kind of gets at the heart of that.
that's it.
If you don't bring your voice to what those needs are, you can't expect them to get met. And when they're not met, you simmer with all sorts of resentment that, just sours
Yes,
everything.
yes. So before you leave, you have to ask yourself, first of all, do I know if there were 3 things that my partner can do differently and they were to do it, would that be enough? Because I've spoken to people and I said, okay, let's say they made all these changes. They did A, B, C, and D. They did all the things that have been missing. And I've had people say, you know what? I still wouldn't want to be with them. And then you kind of have your
Then you
answer.
know.
Then you
Mhm.
know. But oftentimes it's like, if there were 2 things that they could change, would that be enough? And a lot of times people are like, yeah, I just need these 2 things. Okay, so now we can work with that. Then do you know what they need? And how would you rate yourself as a partner? And can you try meeting their needs for about 30 days? Can you try just being thinking about meeting their needs and being the partner that you want to be and seeing if something magical happens? Because often it does, believe it or not.
If you pull the ripcord before performing that experiment,
Yes,
you're jumping ship too soon.
you're jumping ship too soon.
In the context of a newer relationship, though, like how is it different?
I think it's different because, if you're like seeing someone for 3 months and you're not sure if you want to really build with this person, I think values are so important. I wish I'd learned this at a much younger age. Most people don't really take the time to figure out what's really important to them. And I think that you don't want to be the same as your partner. That would be so incredibly boring. But you want to have some core values that are the same. You don't have to, I mean, preferences are one thing. Yeah, sure, it'd be nice if you both ate the same way or went to
Mhm.
bed at the same time. These things help, but you can have all those things on point. But if you don't share like core values and and what you believe a life well lived is, it's never going to work. So you got to ask yourself, does this person, do you feel like you can build a life with this person? Do you feel like this is someone who you could really trust? Do you respect them and do you feel respected by them?
I think that if you don't have that interconnection and some clarity around all of the things that you just said, it's so easy and tempting when someone exciting comes along and they have this whole world that you're not a part of that is, enticing. And you're like, well, my life is kind of like whatever it is right now, but it looks pretty good over there. I'm just going to like go over there
I
and I'm going to
know.
go live in this person's world and their life.
Never a good idea. Gotta have your own life. I don't care how small it is, but you have to have things outside of the relationship that gives your life meaning.
How does the calculus around needs differ in that earlier relationship context? Because I'm thinking about the confusion that can happen where people mistake like unmet needs for unrealistic
Yeah,
expectations.
I know, it's a
It's
big
like, well,
one.
this is my need. And it's like,
Yeah.
is that really your need or
Yeah,
that just what you want?
exactly. Exactly. So, little self-inventory. Everyone wants to be loved. So, what makes you feel loved? Have people write it down. And sometimes what I see is a lot of rules. Well, when they call at this particular time or this and this and
Yeah.
this and that.
They have to text back within
Yeah,
this amount of
yeah,
time.
all
Yeah.
these rules. And the thing is that the more rules you have, the more likely your partner, whoever you're seeing, is going to break those rules because no one can follow all the rules. Got too many of them. But if you can summarize, well, I feel most loved when I'm told, but I'm told in a way like where they're just not just saying love ya, but they're looking at me in the eyes and they tell me and I can feel it through their eyes. There's a presence there. Or I feel most loved when someone really cares about like my well-being. If I'm not feeling well, like they care. They care. They want me to feel good. I feel loved when someone is wants me to thrive. Like they want me to be happy. I know that they can't make me happy, but they want me to be happy. That makes me feel loved. So I try to,
Mm.
those are very realistic expectations. What's unrealistic is they have to always be in a good mood and they have to always be like, paying attention to me. And they have to, not have any problems. They can never be in a bad mood. And I have to feel good. I have to feel good always when I'm around them. I don't want you to feel miserable. A relationship is not supposed to be extended periods of time of misery. There's a problem. But sometimes you're going to be miserable and guess what? It's not your partner, it's you.
Mm.
Most of the time.
What do you think women get wrong about men and vice versa? Men
Mm,
get wrong about women in terms of assumptions and
yeah.
expectations. Like where do kind of like the gender politics,
Mhm.
get involved here and derail us?
I think what women get wrong about men is that they don't care.
Because they're off in the world,
They only think about themselves.
conquering whatever.
They're off in the world
Yeah.
conquering whatever. They just think about themselves and they just don't, they don't care. They don't get their feelings hurt or they don't get insecure. They just don't care. They're careless
And emotionally unavailable.
and emotionally unavailable. And the thing is that a lot of men, particularly of a certain age group, one of the things that men need to get better at, and we're speaking very generally here, is emotional availability, is to not run away from emotional intimacy. I think that's a task. That's work that many men are tasked with if they want to be better partners. Women are tasked with not constantly bringing their complaints about the relationship and about their partner to their partner and seeing more of what's doing well. The thing is, women were wired for safety. So safety is the most important thing to a woman because we are physically weaker
Hmm.
than men and we are the target of violence in a way that men are not. And so we're more vulnerable. And it's so this is biological. So a bad habit that women have is let me search for what's missing and for what's wrong and hyper focus on that because in some way that's just going to keep me safe as long as I'm hyper aware of that.
Mm.
What she doesn't realize is that the man she's with does care and does want to be emotionally available. And he needs to be told that he's wonderful too. And he needs to be told that he's strong. And he needs to be told all these things, that makes him feel good about himself. What men get wrong about, I know there's a lot to unpack here.
Mm-hmm.
What men get wrong about women, all she cares about is controlling me or, needy or, she's going to be just mean to me and shame me and use my vulnerability against me. So I'm not going to be vulnerable because why would I do that? Because this crazy creature is just going to annihilate me.
Yeah, the idea that yes, as a man, I know I'm being told that I need to be more emotionally available and vulnerable. But then when I do, it gets weaponized against me.
Yes.
So I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. We really screw you up in that way, for sure. Here's the thing. We can all do better. We can all do better. Most women are craving their man to be more open emotionally, but we don't want you to be constantly talking about your negative feelings. Then we're turned off. It's just how it goes because, and I know this is hard to hear, and we want to hear when you're having a hard time. Don't pretend like you're not having a hard time, but don't always come to me with your hard time over years. Because then, are you going to be strong enough to protect me? See how this works?
Right. It becomes an incursion on that idea of feeling safe.
Of
Like
feeling safe, yeah.
the need to feel like, okay, everything is under control. That doesn't mean that there aren't problems and difficulties, but
Yes.
fundamentally overall, like you got this, right? And also along the way, I need to feel seen,
Mm-hmm.
like really seen, and I need your presence.
Yes.
And I think that's a challenge for a lot of men to just be, just to be present and restrain the impulse to try to fix whatever is going
The
on
feminine.
and to just be available.
Yes, the feminine always wants the presence. Always wants presence. I think where women are getting it wrong with men is wanting this perfect communicator. And so many men are not raised to emote in that way, the same way that women are. And I say, choose the guy who's really present for your emotions. And if he's having a hard time emoting, make it safe for him to emote because he's going to think that you are going to use it against him. Because if he says something that triggers some insecurity inside you, you have to self-regulate and not make it all about your insecurity. And you have to then be present for him saying something that might in that moment, if you were to allow your mind to really get the best of you, is going to feel like abandonment or is going to feel unsafe. Overall, what I see between men and women, gender stuff, if we can make more room for each other's humanity and also understand, if we want to take it away from gender, we just want to make it feminine, masculine, that there are just certain things that the feminine really thrive off of. And there's certain things that the masculine really thrive off of. And so if you are in a relationship with the opposite sex, you are in a relationship with someone who's more feminine when you're more masculine, having some awareness of this is going to go a long way in your relationship.
That's an incredible insight. Yeah, I think that's super, super valuable. Being able to create that safe place and to remember to self-regulate. Because if you are reactive in that moment, then that person will feel punished for sharing that thing and they're not going to do it the next time. they will have learned that lesson. It works at cross purposes with the goal.
Reward good behavior. We are like dogs in that way.
Yeah.
We are. We are. We learn better. We do better when with positive reinforcement. We're very similar to dogs in that way. We do not, punishment is never a motivator.
Talk a little bit more about the parental piece. I mean, this is one of your 9 truths, right?
Yes.
And it's somewhat counterintuitive. Basically, like if you want to be in a healthy relationship, like you got to heal whatever bullshit happened, that whatever however you were raised and whatever nonsense you are holding on to around like your parents, like you got to work that shit out
And you
because
won't fully work it out, but you
it's
have
gonna
to
creep
somewhat.
in
Yes.
and infect, like
Yes.
turn your relationship into a festering wound.
Yes. Look, you're not gonna heal every single wound, but most people, and I really do mean most when I say this, are unconsciously playing out those wounds all the time. And so if you wanna be in a healthy relationship or you wanna make your relationship healthier, you have to be aware of the unconscious. You have to bring it into your conscious awareness and realize, oh God, I'm doing that thing again because a mom did this and blah, blah, blah. I gotta stop.
How does one begin to do that?
The wake up call for me was like, wow, I thought that if I could just forget about my father, because I was estranged from him for a while, if I could just pretend he didn't exist,
Mhm.
then it wouldn't be a problem anymore.
Right.
The joke's on me.
How'd that work out?
Hi, not
Yeah.
so well. And so it was finally, I mean, it took such a tragic ending to a relationship for me to be sort of like smacked in the face with this reality of, you know, you need to address this. You need to address this.
But looking back through the rear view, it was, divinely ordained for
Yes.
your growth and evolution. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I like these things that we look on as, horrible or tragic or why me, are all these incredible opportunities and lessons for our growth and evolution if we can grab onto them. They just tend to have to show up in very acute ways in order for us to pay attention.
Yes. And this is why I feel so passionate about helping people through heartbreak, which is, no one wants to hear like learn the lesson. But there are lessons. And if you want to not repeat the lessons, you got to learn them.
There's a cultural violence to the story we kind of tell ourselves about what a breakup represents. Like it's a failure. Like if a relationship ends, it was a failure, and it's not necessarily a failure. Like
No.
it could have just come to its completion, and people can go on their separate ways or whatever. And yeah, it's lined with all of these lessons, but just because something ended doesn't mean that it was bad or you're bad or somebody did anything bad.
Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And if you can look at the story differently, it's like it's just being mindful about it. It's being able to, because coming back to stories, we get fixated on the story and we get fixated on the story of the relationship. Every relationship has a story. We get fixated on the story that surrounds the breakup. And then we create a meaning out of the story. A lot of people tragically conclude, well, I'm just not good enough, or I suck at relationships, or relationship sucks, or relationship equals pain, or love hurts, all these things. And then that person is really in a pickle because they want love. They don't want to be alone, but they equate being in a relationship with all this negative meaning. And then they wonder why they keep having problems in relationships because they're stuck in that story, as
Hmm.
opposed to, can you look at the breakup that maybe traumatized you the most and start to look at it from lots of different perspectives and maybe see that it meant something totally different? I could so easily be locked into the story of my breakup, of my divorce. And I was for a little while, of course, because I was hurt and I had to process. My freedom comes from the fact that, like, I mean, God bless that relationship. God bless me for being in that. They talk about divine order and intervention. Like, clearly I was meant to be on a different path. And it's not a failure.
But you glean that clarity by performing that fearless inventory. You have to do an autopsy on your side of the street and your
Yes.
behavior and, you know, elucidate the patterns that, you performed that contributed to this. That's where you can begin the process of unraveling those patterns and creating new ones.
Because I drew a line in the sand, and what forced me to draw that line in the sand is I was in so much pain, and most people change when they're in a lot of pain.
Yes, they do. Why is that? Why can't we just raise our hand and say, "I get it," like, before, I see where this is headed. I'm gonna, like, course correct now.
That's what I'm trying to help people do.
We have to, like, end up I think about this a lot, like, these crises, your crisis. I've had versions of this in my
Mhm.
life, and they become these incredible, um, like, launch pads for growth and evolution.
Yeah.
But, like, did I really need that? Like, I
I
could have
know.
opted to,
It's
make these decisions short of that.
I
It's just
know.
that I think we do on some level, need those experiences to wake us up to another reality for ourselves.
Yeah, it's just the way life works. But we can, once we have an experience like that, we can train ourselves now for certain things. We
Mhm.
can, once we kind of wake up, as you say, we can be like more awake and like be more aware of like certain things. Like, oh, this is, if I go this down this route, this is not going to be a good thing.
Mhm. I think it's also appreciating the gravity of these things. Like, it would be easy to, like, you compartmentalize this thing with your dad. It's not that big of a deal. Like, I've dealt with it. He's whatever, and I'm gonna live my life.
Hmm.
And of course, it leaches out. But the stakes get a lot higher when you have kids.
Yes.
And I think it's incumbent upon you to take responsibility for those things, because until or unless you do, you will pass them on and perpetuate whatever unhealthy behavior pattern. You're going to instill it in them, and then they're going to go out in the world and do it. And
Yes.
this is how these patterns of generational trauma, like, continue to um, exist. And so, what a gift to have that awareness and say, I actually have the opportunity to not do this anymore and to model my behavior in a healthy way so that my kids are spared of what I had to endure, and they're not going to go out into the world and make the kind of mistakes that I did or my parents did.
The greatest gift a parent can give a child, I believe, is teaching them how to face pain. Parents naturally want to protect their children from suffering. I mean, is there any greater love than the love for a child? And suffering is inevitable, pain is inevitable. So you want to teach your children how to have the resilience to face pain by how you face pain, because they're learning from you. So learning how to regulate your emotions is how you teach your child how to regulate theirs.
Mm,
So instead of, because what a lot of parents do unconsciously and with the purest of intentions is they try to control their kid in such a way so that they don't make the same mistakes as they did, as opposed to just teach them how to be more resilient. And you do that by showing
modeling
that,
it.
modeling it, and also just also if they go through something painful, sit down with them and just say and tell them about, like, how there can be a story. Tell them about, like, there are different ways to look at it. Let's talk about the lesson. Let's talk
Mm.
about, like, how great it is to fail. Because when you fail, you're not afraid of failing. And if you're not afraid of failing, you're going to be so much more successful in life, whatever success looks like to you.
The kids have to feel like the parents have got this. They need to have that sense of security and
Yeah.
safety. But I think if that is well established, then you have the opportunity to not be afraid. Like, I think there's this instinct, like, we can't let the kids know that, like, something isn't going well or
Yeah.
whatever, because it may threaten that sense of security. But if that's established and intact, within that, you can be like, oh my, you can like be a little bit more vulnerable with your kids, I think. And I think you're modeling that, you know you're not like, because the kids can see through it anyway.
I was
Like
just gonna say
they know
that.
what's going
They
on.
know it.
So when
Yeah.
you're pretending like you're in control of something that you're not, like they know. And that in and of itself is modeling a certain sort of behavior, and it's undermining trust. But when you can say, like I tell kids my stories about, crazy stuff I did when I was younger or
Mhm.
whatever mistakes I made, and we laugh about it or whatever. But I think it's important to um, demonstrate uh, emotional resilience, in a safe context for them.
Absolutely. And it's just, yeah, I went through this but, I changed the meaning, I changed the
Hmm.
story, you know, whatever, got clean, whatever whatever the stories are
Yeah.
that you tell them, and I did this and I learned so much and I realized that like you just have to keep going. You can't whatever. You can never
Not like,
give up.
don't do this,
Just don't give up when when you face something
hmm
hard.
Yeah. Shifting gears here a little bit. I don't purport to have like any understanding of what it's like to be dating in 2025. Like it is just I've been married a long time.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of compassion for people who are trying to figure that out right now. It seems very difficult and complicated. And that applies across the board. Like listen, like probably the vast majority of my friends and my wife's friends are like divorced or,
Mm.
looking for love. And,
Mhm.
I have teenagers and a 29-year-old and a 30-year-old. And
Mm.
so I get, field reports, from friends and, stepsons and kids and young people about just how difficult and challenging it is right now. So how do you make sense of this and counsel people?
I think it's never been easy to find love. So in some ways, nothing has changed. It's never really been easy. What's harder is that many, many years ago, you would meet people through your circle. If you went to church, maybe it's through church or synagogue, whatever it is, or through your yoga studio. It would be like through community.
Hmm.
The hardest thing, in my view, about dating right now is that we are not, as people in this society, as involved in community as we used to be. So therefore, you're meeting more strangers rather than people who are friends or cousins of someone you know. And and then strangers have less accountability. They can ghost you. Because if you're a really good friend's cousin, you go on a date with your friend's cousin or your whatever, someone you're in community with, their cousin, they can't ghost you because there's too much accountability there. Then it's going to get back and it's going to be a thing and blah blah blah. So there's that. There's also just a lack of manners. So this is what's missing. Like some things are just the same in the sense that it's never been easy to find love. It's never been easy just to find a match. Unless you were raised in a culture where the match is made for you, it's never been an easy thing.
Hmm.
Before dating apps, people would go to bars. The bar is not a great place to meet, your long-term partner. So it's never been easy. And I think that's really important for me to reiterate because I think that we get into these sort of like catastrophic thinking, like it's just everything is horrible now. No, not true. And the problem is like I know I have friends and clients who have met the love of their lives, quote unquote, on dating apps. So I think dating apps can be a really great place to meet someone. But there's also what runs the risk is all the disposability and the lack of manners. And the more we are on our phones and individualized and not in community and not, you're texting instead of like meeting someone on the phone and making eye contact, there's just this wall that exists. And when you're behind the wall, you're like, you don't have to have really strong character. You can get away with a lot of things. And that's what makes it very difficult.
It's by definition objectification of people. I mean, you're swiping these people. I
Yes.
mean, they're disposable consumer products. Everybody's seeking real intimacy and connection on some level, but the means to accomplish that is through a screen in which we're interacting with people as if they're, kind of products on a shelf that we're price
Yes.
comparing.
And you can go on more dates so that you are also more, um, you're more at risk of just like meaningless like hookups and situations. Like never have we been more starved for meaningful connection while simultaneously people are just settling for like sort of these connections
Hmm.
that are not really deep because you can go on several dates a week.
The incentive structure is kind of messed up, right? I mean, if you're just swiping, you're just, oh, there's an unlimited supply
Yeah.
here, and depending upon where you find yourself in the kind of pecking order of desirability, you're in a position to have unlimited choice, right?
Yes.
And so with that, it's like, well, why should I commit to anyone? There's always somebody else. And so if somebody doesn't meet my, insane expectation, I can just move on,
Yes.
and there doesn't need to be any decorum because I can just send a curt text, or I can do nothing and pretend it never happened.
Exactly. And then there's also just the nature of tech and algorithms, which is like, well, like how do I cheat the algorithm? So I'm just going to put a picture of me from 10 years ago or whatever, like lie about my height or, I'm not even being matched with good things. So then, people are like uh only relying on the dating apps. Like if you want to meet someone, exhaust all your resources because you have some choices. You can just live your life and love your life and trust that you'll meet someone when the timing aligns. Or you can get very intentional and exhaust all your resources. You can go on dating apps, you can meet people in real time. If you could go, I don't know, take an archery class if you want to like meet someone, like you got to step outside your comfort zone a lot and make it like a job. The third choice is sit on your couch daydreaming about Mr. Right or Mrs. Right and do nothing.
And just swipe on the handheld casino in your hand.
Exactly. And don't really do anything.
What are the common complaints that you field from men and women about dating apps, and how does it differ based on gender?
Well, this is sort of full circle. Women, it's just like no man is looking for a meaningful connection. Totally emotionally
I
unavailable.
hear that from women friends of mine. Where I want to date, where I can't find a good guy.
Meanwhile, I know lots
And
of
I,
good men.
I have lots of good guy friends who
Yeah.
say, a similar version of that. Like, I've
Yeah.
gone on all these dates and like it never works out, or I get ghosted, or I can't match with anybody.
So the not matching with someone is big. I also think that many, many people, more people than we'd like to admit, don't have great social skills. So they go on these dates and they're just like sitting across, like, it's like this, right? But it's like they're interviewing each other and there's no energy for there even to be any chemistry. And they don't know, they're not particularly savvy when it comes to opening up or getting another person to
Mhm.
open up. And so I think there are lots of people who meet that actually could be a match, but they end up not being a match because they're feeling awkward or they don't know how to talk to each other or they're expecting fireworks from like the moment they see each other. And so we have to be a lot more flexible. So that's the to get back to your original question, you know, men are just emotionally unavailable.
Mhm.
I With men and dating, I don't hear as many complaints other than, maybe she just wasn't right. I have to be honest. But what breaks my heart is, and what I think is just almost utterly ridiculous, is the amount of comments of like, oh yeah, that's because guys are like this, or that's because women are like this. It's like, no. You want to figure yourself out before you go dating? Figure one thing out. Figure out your beliefs about whoever it is you date and sort that out. Because if you hate men, but you love them, you're screwed. If you love women, but you hate them, you're screwed. And this goes back to stories. if you've been very badly hurt, like I remember when my husband left, I went through this, I think it lasted a couple months where, and this was very surprising to me because I'd never experienced this before, where I was also like in a fog. My mom had died. There was just, I felt I was extremely vulnerable. And I remember just like looking at random men at like the coffee shop and just feeling like they were the enemy. And that's not part of my story. That's not something that I've carried before. And it's just because I was so hurt by this one man that I made every man responsible for the sins of my ex-husband. And people are doing that well beyond the 2-month mark and, and not even having that much trauma. They're making every woman responsible for the, whatever.
Right, for their past everyone, for their past grievances
and you
unhealed
really,
wounds.
and unhealed wounds. And you have to sort that out because recently I was around a couple of men, both married, and I was speaking to them. They were giving me some business advice. And I had this thought, it really, really struck me based on how they were with me and also how they are with their wives and how they are in the world. And these are very, very well-known, successful men. They love women, and I don't mean sexually. They actually really, really like women. They really respect women, like deeply and profoundly. And I thought to myself, there is something distinctly different about being around men who genuinely like women. And I thought, wow, there's so many women who hate men. I imagine that so many men on an unconscious level feel that they're hanging out with these women who really don't respect or like them. And I think both men and women are feeling this all the time. And sure, there are, some men out there who can be nightmares and don't behave well in the dating landscape and do more of the ghosting. But there's lots of women who do that too. There's always bad people. But if you're going to go out into the dating world, really try to figure out this aspect of it and hang around some really good people of, if you date women, hang around some good women. If you date men, hang around some good men. They could be the wives or the husbands of others, but you want to, or they could be mothers, it doesn't matter the age. It's very important not to have that unconscious belief of this person is the enemy, because we feel that. I've never felt so safe to be around men who I knew really champion women.
If it's unconscious, though, it's informing your story in a way that you're unaware.
Yes.
And that story is continuously like affirmed and kind of emboldened by sharing it with your friends who are always going to tell you that you're right, and like they're going to kind of like confirm your version of whatever the story is. So the process of taking that unconscious thing, making it conscious so that you can then disassemble it and kind of understand it and create a new story for yourself demands some level of not only like work on your part, but like accountability. Like, this is what you do. You're a coach. You can be this, like a mirror for the people that you work with, but not everybody has a therapist at their disposal or somebody like yourself. They have friends, but those aren't exactly always the right people, and the right context to really launder these ideas. So how does somebody find an accountability partner or engender more accountability into this process?
You can tell your friend, your trusted friend, I actually want to be held accountable. I want you to tell me the truth.
Right. But you're going to go to the friend that always
I know, I know.
See, I
know.
told them to hold me accountable, and they're telling me I'm right. So I must be right.
Or you hire a coach.
Yeah.
or you join that group. I mean, recently I was speaking to a group of women. It's part of a membership that I have. And, I do it in a way that's very loving, but she shared a story. She was so loving. And she was telling me about her boyfriend. She's European, lives in Norway. And she was telling me about her boyfriend she's like, he's amazing. He's a great guy. He loves me. He's really patient with me. I have a lot of anxiety and he's like really patient. But, I have all these trust issues, blah, blah, blah. A lot of the story that a lot of people have, particularly women. And, I sometimes like get jealous or, I have him explain things a lot to me and he's starting to get tired of it because he just wants to be trusted and he's done nothing to break my trust. He's done nothing but prove otherwise.
Mm.
And I just don't know how to, stop this. And I'm going to go to therapy to figure out my childhood and blah, blah, blah. I told her that I knew when she shared this story that she was very close to sabotaging a very good relationship and that I wanted to intervene because I like to act more like an interventionist more than anything else. And when I see something like someone's about to sabotage the relationship, I got to think quick. And I just, the thing that came to my mind was accountability. And I said, and I said it and I delivered it very lovingly. And she knew she wanted the truth from me. And I said, you're being very selfish. All you're thinking about is you and your needs. You're not thinking about and him. Like his feelings are hurt and he's feeling overwhelmed.
His perspective being, I've done nothing, but
Be
I've
a
given you
great,
no reason not to trust me.
and in fact, I've been an amazing partner to you.
And yet I'm repaid for that with distrust and
Yeah.
suspicion.
I mean, how
Yeah.
does that, as a man, how does that feel?
Well, it feels dismissive and disrespectful and unkind and unearned.
Yeah. And hurtful. And she really took that in. She really took that in. I only bring this up because you brought up accountability and like seeking that out. So you got to seek that out. And then the other layer of it was the reason why she was so anxious was because she was going through a hard time. She also she was out of work. She had been sick, so she wasn't working out the same way.
Mhm.
So she didn't have purpose, meaning she wasn't physically feeling well. So all the focus goes to him. So I think that there's a lot to take from this story, which is that context matters. And if you don't have anything in your life that gives you some sort of meaning and your relationship and your partner becomes the only focus and you're anxious, then you are going to just search for what's missing.
Yeah, they become the vessel for all of your nonsense.
The vessel for all of your nonsense.
Yeah.
And so how do you heal that? You heal that by your relationship with yourself. And your relationship with yourself is not about thinking endlessly about your thoughts. It's about what's missing and how can I learn to meet my needs better.
It's so crazy that we understand and value the role of a coach or a mentor or an accountability partner in so many areas of life. It's like if you're an athlete, you have a coach. It's just understood, right?
Yeah.
If you are in school, you have a teacher. And then we kind of become adults and it's like, all right, well, you're on your own now. You must have figured it out by now. It's completely insane, particularly in the context of relationships, when you understand and appreciate the fact that truly the quality of your life, the extent to which your life gives you meaning and purpose and love and all the things that make life worth living, all originate or track back to the quality of your relationships with other people.
100%.
And we're all just freewheeling it out there, getting in our own way and, dropping grenades on our relationships unnecessarily and just screwing up constantly.
Constantly.
It's insane.
It's insane. We have to have a little laugh about it.
So how do we, it's systemic, it's almost like there needs to be a cultural shift where we kind of understand and value and prioritize the importance of all of us finding some version of you in our life to field our decisions by and check ourselves so that we can make sure that we preserve the thing that actually, after all of it, after all the things that we're out there chasing, really is the only thing that matters.
Absolutely. It is the only thing that matters. Find a mentor. And it could be a therapist, but doesn't have to be. It could be a coach, doesn't have to be. But have a mentor. Have a mentor, especially when it comes to this stuff. But, you want someone who knows more than you do when it comes to this area,
hmm
you know?
There's a lot of armchair psychologists out there right now. So it is
Yes.
a little
It's a little
tricky with
tricky.
that because there's plenty of people with their PDF program or whatever.
Yeah.
And I can easily see people, going down blind alleyways
This is
and
how you
getting bad
filter it out.
advice also.
Oh, God, terrible. So this is how you filter it out. You make sure that person has a mentor. That you always make
Oh,
sure
that's
your
interesting.
mentor
That's
has
a really like cool little like litmus test trick.
your mentor should have a mentor. And a lot of the armchair experts on social media don't have mentors. They're not actually working with someone. They haven't actually gone through a certification program, or I don't feel like you have to do years and years of psychology school to help people. I just don't believe that. I'm living proof of that.
Yeah, I mean, what is
But
it?
I have mentors, man. I've
Right.
like invested hardcore.
I'm sure people
Yeah.
say to you, like, I'm interested in the difference between what you do as a coach versus what a psychiatrist or a psychologist does. And also, I'm sure people say to you, like, well, who do you think you are? You don't have the credentials and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
PhD and all that kind of stuff. Like, what is your rebuttal to that?
Well, I've been lucky. I really don't get that a lot. It's very, very rare that I get that. And I think it's because I have an incredible education. I have incredible mentors, and I've devoted my life for the last uh, 12 years with the top mentors in the world. So I've invested and I speak to them every week. And these are people who have helped families recover from molestation. I mean, really hardcore things. So these are not just like, the little mentor. These are like 80-year-olds who've been, in the trenches of hardcore things. And so I often just don't even defend myself because I just know what has to be true. And I've been to therapists who have all the degrees and they haven't helped me. And I've been to therapists with less degrees and they have helped me. So, you know, I don't think it's always the degree.
hmm
I just don't. There are things that are outside of my scope. If you're suicidal, I'm not going to work with you. I'm going to send you to a psychiatrist. If you if you are a danger to yourself, or if you are a danger to your child in a real violent way, no, I'm not working with you. I'm not qualified. So I know what I'm qualified for and I know what I'm not qualified for.
In terms of the modality itself, my sense is that you're like you mentioned, like I'm going to do an intervention on this person. Like
Yeah.
this is, in therapy, it's sort of just tell me more, and the therapist never really gets directly involved in decision making,
That's changing.
which is like I guess I can kind of understand that, but also incredibly infuriating. Like just tell me, it's like
Like, tell me
you've
what to
heard it
do.
all. Like, why am I going to keep,
Yeah.
spinning this yarn when obviously you can see what I can't. Just
Yeah.
tell me, right? I've had Phil Stutz in here a couple times, and he's pretty good about that. He's like, yeah, I leave people with like a tool, or here's what I would like you to do.
Yeah.
Being a coach allows you to have a more proactive role, I presume.
Yes. And I do think that there is a paradigm shift in the field of psychology where there's going to be more of that going on. Um, More of intervening. It's very hard for people to change. People can change. And therapy can be great for understanding your patterns, but what's the next step to make change? That's where things are. And to really see that there's so much context to a person's problem.
That's what makes solving it so specific and challenging, and why I kind of bristle up against a lot of self-help with a
Mhm.
reductive, like, here are the 10 things that you should do to
Mhm.
change your life,
Right.
because everything is so nuanced and unique,
Yes.
context dependent for that person. But with that being said, with all of the people that you've worked with, what would you say is the differentiator between the people who can get it and like, I want to change, and then they actually go and do it
Mhm.
and make progress versus the person who struggles and really is challenged or unable to take these tools and put them into action to make the change?
Hunger, their desire to change, often motivated by pain, so much suffering that you just can't
Mhm.
stand it another minute. I
Yeah.
think that's what
It
makes
hasn't
people.
gotten it hasn't gotten bad enough
Yeah, the
yet,
rock
basically.
bottom,
Yeah.
it's the same thing with addicts, and as you know, like, you have to hit that threshold. So that's the biggest motivator. And then there are just people who they say they want things different, but they're still just getting so many needs met the old way that it doesn't make
Mhm.
sense the new way, and there're just some people who are just ready. It's so great working with someone who's ready. They may be a slow learner in terms of, or a slow changer, and everyone is different. But when someone's really ready, it's a beautiful thing.
Willingness is a tricky,
Yeah.
fickle thing. You can't compel it in somebody.
So you have to have a why that's compelling. And sometimes that why is if I don't change, the the consequences are not ones that I want to live with.
Mm. As we wrap this up, what is your sort of unifying thought that you want to leave people with
Uh,
about something? Give them. I'm not asking you to like make some grand proclamation, but like maybe one insight that is overlooked or underappreciated in this context of navigating relationships.
mhm. You know, working on yourself is not about fixing yourself. You're not broken. Working on yourself is literally unlearning a lot of beliefs and conditioning and patterns so that you can be free free or more whole. And so I say this because in the whole personal development world, the working on yourself and you have to do the work. Yeah, you do. But it's really more about self awareness and it's not about fixing. So, yes, work on yourself, self reflect, but also understand that it's not easy, but it's simple. And that is you believe that you are not good enough in some way. You've got some shame. And even though there are parts of you that are not as amazing as the other parts of you, no one is walking around perfect. So recognize that everything that you do that you're like, oh, why did I do that? Or why was I avoiding it? Why? Blah, blah, blah. It's just because you are afraid that you are not good enough. So give yourself a break.
Mm.
We're all in it together. And if you can recognize that, then you can start to shed some of the pride and all the crap that kind of surrounds it. That is the one insight that I really want people to understand. When you're starting to feel those old patterns come up, you are just afraid of failing. And if you fail, somehow love is going to be deprived. You're going
Mm.
to be deprived of love. That is literally that's the game. That's it.
Beautifully put. I think that really did encapsulate it. I also think that it's the greatest gift that you can give to other people. Like you can do it for selfish reasons because you want love or you want to be happier or whatnot. But it also is such a benefit to everybody else, right?
Yes,
Like it's an act of selfless service as much as it is an act of self-love
absolutely.
to everybody else. So
Well said.
yeah, I love it. This was great. Your book, It Begins With You. I mean, like smash bestseller sensation all over the world. Your face is all over the place. You are performing an incredible public service in
Thank
doing what
you.
you're doing. So for people that are interested in learning more about you, they could pick up the book. Also, your podcast, Jillian on Love.
Yes.
How's that going? How are you enjoying that?
I love it. It's a very different thing than what you do, because it's more solo
Yeah,
episodes.
you're just staring down the barrel of the camera
I
and telling
know.
people what's up.
I don't think I
I
could
don't know how
ever.
you do that.
I don't know how you do what you do.
It's great. Yeah, every video is like very kind of focused on a particular issue, and you just cut to the chase.
Thank
Pretty
you. I
cool.
appreciate you.
Yeah. So check that out. And anything else going on you want to mention?
Yeah. Basically, I have a membership for women called The Conscious Woman, where we all talk about this stuff, and that's great. And other than that, find me on social media. I'm there for you.
Yeah, you're everywhere.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.